years has been the best books ever written on the case, because they've had the advantage of correcting the errors of the past and having a lot of documents that have come out. They've been able to say, wow, there's a corroboration, such and such was here or wasn't here, and be able to clean things up. Because for the longest time, if you look at the third decade, the fourth decade, the print journals for the internet kicked in, you'll see a lot of good-natured, well-meaning people, but they'll make mistakes. They'll be like, I believed Oswald did. There was a famous one about Oswald, that somebody saw a wedding ring in the photo of Oswald in captivity and said, what about the ring? It's like, oh no, that was a Dallas police officer who just got his hand in the photo. But back in 1990, 1991, it was compelling stuff because we had nothing else to go on. What I'm trying to say is you have John Newman and other people going to the National Archives now. You have millions of documents that have been released. You have people doing just God's work with these books and whatnot, authors. And the case has just gone so much further than it did forensically and other things back in the past. And that's what leads back to me with the Secret Service is that, you just had a situation where people just look at Robert Groden. That's a famous thing he said in 1992 to me, because I guess that's why the Secret Service is secret. I never really looked at them, to be honest with you. And this is Robert Groden, one of the legends of the case. And this is not the casting aspersions. He's a fantastic guy and everything. It's just a matter of everybody's lens. Some people are just fascinated with Hoover and the CIA and the mafia, and they just don't really care about the Secret Service or other areas of the case. So it takes someone to have an interest. That was me contacting these gentlemen. In fact, Sean, thank God I spoke to Gerald Bain and a lot of his colleagues, because like Gerald Bain's case, he died 6 months later of cancer. So if I never would have contacted you, realize what people would do. They'd say, Vince, your work's wonderful, but did you ever speak to the number one agent? What would his take on? See? So then I talked to the number one guy, the number two guy, one of the shift leaders, Art Godfrey, who was on the Texas trips, and told me that's a bunch of baloney. Kennedy never ordered agents off the car. In fact, Sam Kinney, the driver of the fall-off car, he's the sole responsible person for the bubble top not being on the car in Dallas. It was originally on, then they took it off. He said it's one of his, back in the early 90s, it was my 30-year regrets whether I made the right decision or not. But if you read books, you say, oh, Kennedy didn't want that bubble top on. No truth to that at all. And what I say that for so boldly is you go to my YouTube channel, the one video that's there for free, and you'll see, my God, look how many times he had the bubble top on. He looks like he's smiling, ear to ear grin. There's one little girl goes up to the bubble top and he waves to her. And then, the thing about the bubble top is, yes, it wasn't bulletproof from a standard way of looking at things, but it was bullet resistant in the respect that anything would have helped. The several agents I spoke to said it was a deterrent, and the biggest reason it was a deterrent, it was a psychological deterrent, because 99% of the public thought it was bulletproof. So would a respective assassin even fire if he saw the bubble top on the car? He'd say, oh, it is the bubble top on, because everybody thought it was bulletproof. Many times Kennedy had the best of both worlds too, Sean. He would have the bubble top in partial form. He would have the front and rear pieces on and leave the middle piece open so you can get some air and every once in a while stand up. Now, people got to realize every once in a while, they say, Vince, this still photo, Kennedy's like a sitting duck. He's standing up in the motorcade. The thing is, the car was going between 25, 35 or more miles an hour. Building rooftops were normally guarded. Hello, you had agents on the back of the car. So what might have not been 2025 era security, vintage security, but it was damn good for the time. And that's why, again, President FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy had lived all this time until November 22nd. In fact, this discovery, Sean, was only less than 5 years ago during the COVID lockdown. There's a gentleman who had a wonderful YouTube channel. His channel went under probably because copyright concerns. He had so much from the networks. Well, he had a beautiful video that I have it on my channel now several times. I've saved it too. ABC's Ron Gardner telling the world, the multi-millions of people watching, saying that normally building rooftops were guarded. I can't understand how something like this could have happened. In fact, this has happened for many presidents before, where the building rooftops are guarded to prevent just such an occurrence. And that's before they announced President Kennedy dead. That he's telling the world that he has this antiquated audio piece up to his ear and telling everybody this. Well, I'd never seen it before. I said, my God. And I ripped it. I took it off his channel and everything. Thank God I did. His whole channel went under. So there would be no clip of that telling the world. But again, then it goes back to what my mom and dad said. 10 people could have shot Kennedy, Vince. We were so grief-stricken. All your details went in one ear, not the other. They just said, Kennedy was killed. They didn't care where Oswald. In fact, they didn't know if Oswald was in the front or the back. They didn't know if other people were involved. They just was like, oh. And again, it just harkens back to what I said earlier when we first started talking about the case. All bets were off when Ruby stepped in. That's when the credibility just skyrocketed downward. They couldn't believe it. Oh, come on. we're supposed to believe that one man did this. He's denying it all, and then Jack Ruby looks like a mafia don just in the video. He steps forward and plugs Oswald, and that's it. And we know about with Ruby what he said. It's on my YouTube channel as well. People have seen this before. It says the world will never know the true facts, my motivations. And the report says, "Are these people in high places, Jack?" And he says, "Yes." So,
all right, let me just try and take some of the essential components out of this then.
yeah.
So Kennedy's in his vehicle, roof is down, Oswald's in the building, the book depository building, right?
But it's rifle, not him. His rifle's being used while he's down in, the lunchroom. Yes.
So he's downstairs and he's right. Someone's got his rifle upstairs.
Right.
All right. So Kennedy's driving through. And are you saying that which direction do you think the first shot came from?
I think the first shot did indeed come from the rear. I wouldn't roll out the records building next to the book depository, like in that area, the Daltex building or the records building. Could it even come from Oswald's weapon? Again, you're setting someone up. You're going to use his weapon, darn it. You want that to happen. It'd be like if someone stole your car and robbed the bank. Like, Sean, we have your vehicle. We have the license plate. You're like, oh, I wasn't there. But they'd see your vehicle. Same thing with the rifle. So that's it. The first shot of shots rings out, and that's when Greer turns around, staring at Kennedy, slows the limousine down, and disobeys. Okay, shot from the rear. And we know for a fact Connolly was definitely shot from the rear. None of the silliness that he was never shot from the rear. He was definitely shot from the rear. He was definitely shot from the front. Not only we have the medical people that said that the throat wound was an entrance wound, but he's flying backwards to the left. The back of his head's gone. The vast majority of people, my second book of the medical evidence, I talk about that. Okay, so you had this, crossfire. You had the people totally surprised. They're there waving. Their kids are like all smiling. Here's Kennedy, Jack, like Hollywood royalty. This happens in just a few seconds, and it's over. And to be fair, now most of those people ran towards the grassy knoll and whatnot, but a lot of them were just in shock. They didn't know what to think or feel until things were done. And people have a tendency to always put this on Vietnam. The motive for this case was Vietnam. I think the motive of the case was Cuba. That's all the connections to Oswald. Vietnam was more like a backwater, back page story in 1963. And I want to believe that Kennedy never would have had a land war in Vietnam, but there's a part of me that says I can't see him totally getting out of it either. So I think it was Cuba was the whole motivation. They wanted to bomb it back to the Stone Age. They wanted to get rid of Castro once and for all because Bay of Pigs didn't do it. The Cuban Missile Crisis didn't do it. Kennedy shut down the camps. That was going to be the end of Cuba. Their dreams of getting back. We only know the mafia wanted Cuba back too. So it was just a matter of all that. And now, as far as the Secret Service goes, when you don't have the motorcycles bracketing a limousine in good number, you only have 4, but they're behind the rear wheels. They're out of harm's way. You have no military aid in the limousine, out of harm's way. You have a third stringer. Again, imagine going to the Super Bowl or the World Cup. You don't have your starting player, the number one star of your team. You have a third string off the bench. That's what he was, okay? Then you don't have building rooftops guarded as they normally were. Just compare and contrast. I have it in my last 2 books where all the trips for Kennedy's, the motorcade, the rooftops were guarded. But just the prior one in Florida, they were guarded very well. They weren't guarded at all. Okay, just even if they weren't guarding anywhere else but Dealey Plaza, common sense tells. In fact, that agent Joe Petro even said in his book that it's common sense. If you look at Dealey Plaza, that's a perfect place to assassinate a president. Triangle of fire, he's slowing down. And one thing I'll get to before I forget, I told you before about Gerald Bain told me something else tantalized. I said I'd get to it later about the motorcade route. Well, he told me he was interviewed with the House Select Committee, which I already knew, but he says they also interviewed him under executive session. Sean, to this day, his executive session testimony has not come forward. And also Maurice Martineau, the head of the Chicago office, also spoke to them in executive session. His materials have never come forward. But I said, boy, what did they ask you, sir? He says, they asked me about the trip before in Florida, and he asked me why the motorcade route was changed for Dallas. Again, it almost dropped my phone moment. I said, was the motorcade changed for Dallas? He says, I know it was changed, but why? I've forgotten completely. I don't know. So all you got to focus on. He could have been lying. Oh, Vince, he remembered. He just didn't want to tell you over the phone what the details were. He's admitting that the motorcade route was changed for Dallas. He's admitting the House Select Committee is asking him this. And again, all these years later, Assassination Records Review Board, and yes, I did tell Jefferson Morley and other people to look for these things. Maurice Martineau, executive session testimony, never released. Gerald Baines, executive session testimony, never released. And this is a big thing because some people on the other side said, oh, that's a myth. His motorcade route wasn't changed, darn it. Well, it also turned out research I did for my first book, I have a whole chapter in the motorcade route, that they were going to go Maine to industrial. In fact, when FDR visited Dallas in 1936, he went straight down Main Street. That was the normal thoroughfare, what you would do, when you visited Dallas. In fact, ironically, when Senator Lyndon Johnson and Senator John Kennedy visited Dallas on September 11th of 1960, they drove through Dealey Plaza Main Street, never went through that dog leg. They went straight the other way. Okay, Forrest Sorrells, the head of the Dallas office, was part of security in both instances, FDR and in 1960. And yet, just to visit a few more people, they did that awkward dog leg turn to make these turns to go past the book depository, slow the vehicle down, open up to a field of fire. If they would have been going straight down Main Street, again, which is the normal thoroughfare, the normal parade route, as Governor Connolly even admitted under oath, they would have been going further away from the book depository, further away from the grassy knoll, and at a faster rate of speed. In fact, Jerry Bruno, Democratic National Committee advance man, even posited that to William Manchester. I think he also did the Haslett Committee. He might even be in his book, The Advance Men, that his great thing he always thought in his mind, boy, if only Kennedy was going down Main Street, maybe his assassination never would have occurred. There's one official source that tries to poo-poo and tries to debunk this, and it's Sheriff Bill, it's Lumpkin, right off the top of my head. It's Bill Lumpkin, I think his name is. He was, he's an assistant police chief. I think it was Lumpkin. That's it. Yeah, just right now I'm trying to think of the name. And again, I explore it in my chapter 4 of my book. And he says, oh, there was winos and broken pavement on Main to Industrial. That's why Kennedy didn't go there. And the Haslett Committee seemed to buy it. Thing I'll say about that is President Kennedy visited the slums of Caracas, Venezuela. President Kennedy visited the slums of Harlem, New York. Wherever the president goes, so go the people, so go the security. I've been to Industrial Boulevard. Yeah, it's not fancy and ritzy, but certainly no embarrassment to a president to go down. I've been to Dealey Plaza several times. They could have definitely gone straight down Main Street. And again, Gerald Bain telling me, the Haslett Committee asked him why the motorcade route was changing. He goes, I know it was changed. Why? Amazing bombshell stuff. But again, these have never been released. His staff interview has been released. Okay, just like Maurice Martineau's staff interview, where somebody interviewed him, took notes, that was released in 1996. But his executive session testimony is not. And I told Jefferson Morley, I said, I wonder who else was interviewed in executive session in their materials. Did they bypass the law of putting these records away for 75 years, and the ARB just totally missed it, fumbled the ball, or didn't know about this? Because I wonder if there's a treasure trove of executive session testimony of other principal people from the CIA, FBI, whatnot, witnesses to the case. Really makes you think, Sean. So
everyone's loving the level of detail you're giving here, Vince, and we really appreciate that. So let me just go back to the chronology briefly then.
Sure.
So you said there's a crossfire occurs now. You've got a guy with Oswald's gun up in the tower. You've got shots coming from front and behind. How many shooters total do you calculate? And are they all front and behind, or is there a triangulation going on as well?
Yeah, I believe there was 2 from behind, one using Oswald's rifle from the book depository, and just 1 from the front. I don't buy into this army of shooters. Some people get carried away. Oh, there was 12 people shooting. There was 20 people shooting. No, come on. Let's get real. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, if anybody's heard a 21-gun salute, 21 rifles of fire, sounds like 1. Their precision is amazing. So we're only talking 3 shooters, not 21-gun salute. We're just talking 3. So again, they're shooting from the rear, and I believe either the Daltex building or the records building next to the book depository. One with Oswald's rifle, 1 from the front. Now I have wavered on exactly where from the front. Sometimes I believe that traditional grassy knoll, where the acoustics evidence, that juncture of the fence where the big tree's at, and there's a 6 Seconds of Dallas, Josiah Thompson. It's you see what looks like a fedora hat, and you can see right over the fence that mark. But there's another part of me, because I've visited Dealey Plaza several times, the juncture of the overpass and the fence. There's a little bit of a diagonal area that's away from anybody who's on the overpass to see. And there's a grating there. It's not a manhole cover. It's a grating. And you just take the grate off, and someone could have been firing there just a little bit of a, either under the fence or maybe a little bit of section through the fence, and that would have been a perfect place to have shot Kennedy from there too. I have not ruled out the South No either, but I don't believe that was part of the headshot or whatnot. And again, the way Dealey Plaza was structured, the lack of security, if it was an inside job, all you had is a few people that hated Kennedy from the Dallas Police Department, a few people didn't like Kennedy from the Secret Service to do what they did. And the vast majority of other agents and other officers are following orders, even if the orders are perplexing. Like, I don't like some of the agents even admitted to Gerald Blaine in his book, The Kennedy Detail. Yeah, they have similar names, Bain and Blaine. Said that I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car either. Why is he for the first time all of a sudden? My comment is, yeah, why indeed? And not to get on, I'll make this very brief, not to be in a big digression, but it's actually very important, is that, as most people know, Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine, BLAINE, came out with books, Kennedy Detail, Mrs. Kennedy, Me, etc. They came out with those books from 2010 on. Well, those books, at least the initial ones, were in reaction to yours truly. And this is not delusions of grandeur or events. You're just taking credit for something. How do we know it's you? I'm 100% sure. I had attorney letters sent to me. I spoke to Blaine and Hill before the books were even a thought. And they saw, because again, my first book wasn't even out yet. Okay, I was just an amateur author. In fact, it was self-published, my first book, before it came out, Trying Day. Okay, and they saw my internet writings, and I think it freaked them out. What happened was Gerald Blaine told me, like he told all the other colleagues, echoed the same thing. Gerald Blaine told me that President Kennedy never interfered with their actions at all, and yet he's seeing my work. He even admitted in 2005 interview when he began his book that when I saw some of the writings on the internet, I knew I had to do something to counter this. And when he comes on C-SPAN on television with the head of CEO, Brian Lamb, him and Clint Hill, they spend 10 minutes talking about yours truly. I have it on my page. And then the second time Clint Hill's on C-SPAN, he brings up me out of nowhere again. It's a totally out of context. They're talking about Jacqueline Kennedy, all these wonderful stories about John, and Caroline. Out of nowhere, the CEO of C-SPAN goes, this gentleman, Vince Palamara, do you remember talking about him last time? He says, yes. Well, he came out with a review of your book, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is I was little amateur me in an apartment eking out a living at the time in 2010, 2012. I didn't even have a book out yet. Why were they going after me and showing YouTube videos? The answer is why indeed. They came out of their books. And if anybody reads Gerald Blaine's book, The Kennedy Detail, it's blame the victim writ large. It's like a neon sign. Kennedy did it. Kennedy killed himself. Basically, you might say, what? Kennedy killed himself. Vince, what are you talking about? He believes Oswald had it alone, but he said that Kennedy ordered him off the car. He didn't want that bubble top. Oh, he did this. If this never would have happened, if Oswald never would have succeeded if Kennedy didn't order him off the car. And he did all that because he saw my writings. He said, my God, because I sent a 22-page letter to Clint Hill in 2005, which was a thumbnail sketch of all my work. When I spoke to Clint Hill after I sent him a letter bold enough to do that, he was angry as heck at me because I don't have any interest in talking to you and all of that. And then all of a sudden, I read the trade papers, and there's Gerald Blaine with a forward by Clint Hill, and they're writing a book called The Kennedy Detail. And right on the flap jacket, it says, Kennedy often banned them from the car. It's like, oh, here we go. And then I get an attorney letter from Gerald Blaine saying to cease and desist about blogging about him any longer. I didn't, because I talked to my attorney. He says, it's free speech. As long as you're not calling him something really horrible, you're allowed to. It's free speech. Keep doing what you're doing. You're all right. I'll protect you. Well, a friend of Gerald Blaine's contacted me at work right before my first book, Survivor's Guilt, was coming out. I got a scary call from the head of human resources. Vince, can I speak to you? Yeah. Is there a private room, just you and I? I thought, I'm getting fired. What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong, did I? So, and I can't, for legal reasons, say the gentleman's name. He was a good friend of Gerald Blaine. That such and such contacted the CEO, and once you terminated for your anti-patriotic writings about his friend Gerald Blaine, this guy was in military intelligence. I won't say his name. Well, he called not once or twice. No, your listeners are probably wondering, what happened? What happened, Vince? Well, no consequence, thank God, came to me. They laughed. Says, Vince, all letters are censored. They never go screened, I should say. They never go to the CEO. They read them first, and if it's deemed appropriate, they'll send it on to them. So the CEO never said it, never saw it. Vince, you're okay. Your employment's fine with us. You didn't do anything wrong. Says, I don't know why he's doing it, but if he writes again, he'll be in trouble. He wrote again. A month later, he wrote another letter trying to get me terminated from my job. So if people think there's nothing to this, Oswald, let alone get a life, why is Gerald Blaine of the Kennedy detail sending angry attorney letters to me? Why are they talking to me about on C-SPAN, little old me on C-SPAN before a book came out? And why is he having his military intelligence connected friend trying to get me fired from my job if there's nothing to this? Why indeed? That's what I'll say. Because they realize, so Sean, what they realize is Oswald or no Oswald, conspiracy or no conspiracy, they're the men who killed Kennedy. Because again, it should have been prevented. It's not like Vance, oh, come on, damn you. Greer does his normal. I always tell people, if a loved one's in the back of the car, okay, and shots ring out, and they're like this, and you gonna sit there and go, are you okay? Is everything like this? No, you're gonna hit the gas, you're gonna swerve, you're gonna do something. Instead, he didn't do what he did. And all the other things that were taken away from Kennedy. And again, all this happened on the day Kennedy shot. It's not like, oh, this happened in Louisville, Kentucky, Vince, and